Broadsoft, Skyport, and I think there was one more company, I kind of forget the name. And Perspica is the 200th one. So while I was talking to one of a person who actually was the 200th, the landmark, right? I remember first, and I joined Cisco in 1996, even though I interviewed with them in 1995. I took like 6 months to decide, should I join, should I not? And I was at Sun at that time. And Sun was a great company. I still have a lot of respect for Sun. I know it's part of Oracle, which I but definitely, it's something that I still respect anybody who worked at Sun, and it was hard to move, but Cisco was a great company for me. I've been working in Cisco for 21 years. I've tried various roles, and I think I've got some people who work with me. I work with them, and Praveen, in particular, he used to be my manager, and I'm very happy to see that I'm going to be talking to him today in a very different capacity. And so one thing I do want to kind of, tell you all is no idea is stupid, and no discussion will go waste if you really kind of put your passion into it, right? As long as you kind of believe in it and you start kind of really putting some, mechanics and kind of connect with the right people, you are probably going to make it big. So today, we want to kind of really get few people who have done that, and I'm sure you will find that the panel is going to be pretty diverse, and they are going to share very different experiences. And when I'm talking to them on the panel, you will understand each one of them will bring different perspectives, right? So what I want to do is, before I get them on the stage, I just want to kind of first talk about ICON. This is Indians Connecting People. This is a ERG group in Cisco, was actually formed by Pankaj Patel, who is not with Cisco anymore, but he's the one who actually started it. I got involved only 3 years ago, and I'm the executive sponsor for this. And the main goal of this is to kind of really get Indians, not only within Cisco, but actually in the Valley, connect, and we've got various chapters as well. And I would like to kind of have the ICON people just stand up. I think we've got a leadership team here. If you could please stand up. So they are kind of doing this on their part-time. Obviously, there is no pay for this. Like, they are really voluntary, and their goal is they're trying to really help develop engineers or anybody who has an idea. How do you connect them to any ecosystem that they probably should be part of? Train them, kind of get them to some sessions like this, so they kind of get motivated, inspired, and also kind of expand the brand of Cisco, because Cisco believes in connecting people, and obviously ICON stands for that. So I really want to kind of thank not only the ICON, but actually kind of helping with this kind of an event with FalconX. And I think Dipti already talked about what all FalconX is doing, and I'm really happy to partner with FalconX to do events like this, and this is my first event with FalconX. So really want to thank FalconX for that. So with this, what I would like to do now is kind of introduce our panel members and kind of get them onto the stage. And once we get them on the stage, each one of them will speak about their company. They will talk about their journey, what kind of worked for them, and what they saw when they picked up this assignment, and what are they doing right now. I think that would be something that they will talk about it on their own words. And each one of them will do it in 10 minutes, and then I will do a panel after that. So we'll get started with. Victor is not here. Okay. So I'd like to kind of introduce Praveen. Praveen, to me, I kind of know him for 20 years, right? And I think I've seen him in so many different roles. But the way I will describe him is one person that I think I got to know him, and after that I got hooked on, right? I worked with him probably in 3 or 4 different roles, and he has moved on from Cisco, but I've not. And I still kind of continue to keep in touch with him. He has kind of done various roles at Cisco. He kind of comes from field. This is something that I found out when I met him at that time. He was in the field in Cisco. Then he got to engineering. Then he did marketing. Then he kind of ran enterprise. He ran service provider. Then he went and he became a CEO of VCE, which is compute. I mean, obviously, you may know about EMC, Cisco, Intel. We had a partnership. And that company, obviously, Cisco kind of appointed Praveen as a CEO, and it became $1 billion, actually more than $1 billion business before he moved on. And I just found out he is now he is a kind of managing partner at SoftBank. But in between that, this was a very short period that he did something magical, and that's probably what we're going to talk about today. He took on a CEO role of Viptela, right? And obviously we want to hear from him that why was he brought in, and what magic did he do, and he made a great exit for the company. So let's welcome Praveen Akkerji to the stage. Let's get our next guest. I don't know which order they are putting the picture, so that's why I'm not taking it there.
He put time in.
Timer? No. Uh-oh. Why is the timer?
Timer.
Bhaskar.
Let's
Set them all up.
Okay, let's kind of get our next guest. Now his name is Bhaskar, and I don't know him before, but while I was talking to him, I got to learn a little bit about what he has been. But I think he's been doing startups, right? I mean, it is not his first startup. So he's done many startups, but the one we're going to talk about today is AppDynamics, right? Obviously, how many people are envious about the exit that AppDynamics got? Bhaskar told me he himself too. So definitely it's one of the biggest acquisitions Cisco made in the recent times. And then AppDynamics obviously got Cisco into a new market, which we didn't play in. So Cisco kind of always gets into three places. Either you expand the market, you get into a new market, or you accelerate. That means sometimes you get into buying a competition, like here. We got Viptela, who used to compete with us. And then founding member, he was a CTO. He told me he was writing code as well as he gets started, and he has done that before as well, but even on AppDynamics, he kind of was the beginner, and then obviously the team became bigger, and it went on for many years before they got this exit. They were about to go IPO, and then Cisco got lucky, I think, that they are part of Cisco now. I would like to get Bhaskar onto the stage.
Okay, and then, next.
Sorry, Bhaskar. So while we were at, while I was talking about Praveen, right, we also wanted to have one of the founders for Viptela. As I told you, right, Praveen was brought in at a later stage, and he was a CEO. But I think I would like to kind of invite Khalid, who has been a long-time Cisco person. And I was telling Praveen that I think I worked with Khalid while he was at Cisco, but obviously I forgot that he went and kind of started Viptela and creating SD-WAN startup, which obviously all of us know how hot that market is right now. And there are many startups who are doing SD-WAN, but Viptela is the one that Cisco picked to join us, and Khalid is one of the founders, and I would like to welcome him. Okay. I don't want this job. This is not the job I want. We will not, that is not part of the panel today. I would like to now introduce, because as you look here, there is a little bit of diversity we're trying to bring, and I think the first diversity we're going to bring is gender diversity, right? So, Suparna, I got to talk to her today while I was driving to work, and she is actually one of the founding engineers, probably the first woman engineer on Jasper team. And Jasper is an acquisition that Cisco made to get into IoT market. Even though Cisco created that market, we didn't have our footing. And this company got started in 2007 with few people like Jehangir and Amit who could not be here. They really wanted to be here. And Suparna is their first hire.
Yay.
And she is the first woman engineer. I'd like to introduce her. And she told me some very interesting stuff that I will try to cover in the panel, but welcome, Suparna. And the last one. So this is a person, obviously, while I was talking to him, he is in San Francisco. I said, hey, let's kind of get face to face because I don't know who you are, right? And this is a company, obviously, he told me that he started debugging issues way back in Columbia University, and then he got into AT&T. He worked for somebody that you will all be proud of working for, Brian Cunningham, Brian. And obviously, I know Dennis Ritchie, and I know you all must have read his book, See, right? And he worked for Brian, and I said, I need to shake my hand with you. Right? Obviously, that was my first language, and I wanted to shake hands with him. And JF worked for Brian when he was at AT&T. And he has done many startups. He's from Canada. He was in East Coast. He has kind of come to West Coast. Now, those people who are in East Coast and worked in Boston, what is one thing that resonates in Boston? You have to work on AI, right? I mean, AI is the term. I mean, if you go to Boston, that's probably the thing that anybody is working on. And JF started working on it probably before it was people recognized it as a technology. And when I looked at his LinkedIn profile and I was talking to him, his passion for solving problems and kind of root cause is something that made Perspica be acquired by AppDynamics, right? And that, to me, was amazing that he was able to keep this passion for 25 years, and finally he made it a business success, and now Cisco is kind of calling that business IQ, and that's a new parameter for AppDynamics. AppDynamics was bought for application performance monitoring, and he's bringing a business dimension. So I would like to introduce JF, and one other interesting thing about JF, I was telling him, hey JF, I'm very sorry, I've got all Indians on the panel, right? You're the only non-Indian. And then he said, don't worry Ravi, I've got a tag to show you. Okay? I would like him to show, if he doesn't mind, the tattoo that he has got in his hand. And the one that reads, those of you who don't speak Hindi or read Hindi, says, Jab tak hai jam. Look, I have got the Indian inside you, right? This is like, you express yourself far better than all of us. And he said he did this for his team in Noida, in Delhi, right? He said every 6 months he was visiting Noida, and obviously his startup, he's got a few people in US, a lot of people in India. And he said this is the way he was showing his affection to his team. And he said, team means everything to me, so I will, and it looks like he enjoys it. It's a tattoo, he can't remove it. So really, I feel very honored to be with such distinguished speakers here, and I hope that you will enjoy, about their journey, and hopefully we'll get some information from them, but also you get to ask some questions as well. So we'll start with Praveen, and Praveen and Khalid, they will talk about their story on Viptela, and then we'll go with Suparna, then we'll go with Bhaskar, then with JF.
So I'll start with day 0, and I'm handed to him day 10. So we started in around 2012. The idea was in 2010 we started to discuss internally. Actually, I took the idea of Viptela inside of Cisco, and to my good luck, nobody listened. So we were talking to a lot of VCs. This is around time when software-defined networking was taking off. And nobody was actually looking at software-defined WAN being a bigger problem. Because from a lot of perspectives, it's the wide area which was changing the way the data models were shifting. We were not connecting to data centers, we were expecting to connect to centers of data. And this is transforming into an arbitrary connection. And the place where 90% of your business still happens is in the branch. And that is not efficiently connected. So we were going out VC after VC after VC, and trust me guys, we got so much rejection. So many VCs rejected us till we landed in front of Sequoia. And every meeting, there were people, networking was pretty dormant in around 2000, 2011, 12. It was mostly about social media, it was mostly about applications, and you're going and saying there's a transformation happening in networking, nobody was interested. And after 25 rejections, we ended up in front of Sequoia. The biggest difference was the meeting was supposed to be 30 minutes and it lasted more than 2 hours. And to our good luck, somebody had just recently, David Corin, had joined Sequoia from Google where he was doing software-defined wide area. And he grilled us for more than 2 hours, a 30-minute meeting. When my partner and I, Amir, we were in that session, we came out and Amir said, well, that went rough. And I said, I think this guy's going to fund us. Because the question he was asking was very obvious to us that he understood the problem. And this is the time Google was on the data center SDN, but they were also looking at a SD-WAN. So the point to us was we had reached a point where it was difficult for us to use our savings and pay our bills. And to our good luck, we got a consulting gig from a big financial, so we were able to pay our bills. But the amount of rejections we faced was just, at once or twice we thought about giving up. But as we were consulting to these big financials, they were obviously telling us, this is the problem, guys. Go figure it out. And if you want our references, we'll give you that references. So we were able to take the company, the idea, from a point from funding into building initially a very solid team. We got people from different startup backgrounds, from Cisco backgrounds, and we were able to put together a team which was, in fact, Sequoia said that in a couple of meetings in front of larger audiences, Viptela is one of the few teams that was brought in that did not pivot an inch from their vision to the day they sold their product. We were crystal clear with the problem statement, and we were very proud of it because we executed well, we didn't pivot, and we reached a point where in a startup journey, you realize that we are good product people. There comes a time you bring good leadership to take you to the next level. And actually, I'll tell you my story with Praveen. The first time I met him, we were having breakfast. He was telling me about his life. I was telling him this tale. And in fact, when Carl Eschenbach joined us on the board, and I said to him, I said, he told me, he said, do you know Praveen? I said, yeah, I've had 2 lunches and breakfast with him, and can you push him to come over here? Praveen was somebody we brought in for scale reasons, and I've known Praveen for about 25 years now. We were both young, we started together, and he went very far. I was trying to chase him, but so it was a lot of fun working with him and getting him to bring into a company and take us from a revenue to a run rate of 100 million, and then CIsco acquisition. So he pretty much drove that piece for us and executed very well, and then he dumped us. And he's now at SoftBank, but it's been a pleasure working with him, and I let him sell from 5 million to 100 million run rate.
You know, Khalid is very modest. I'll tell you, it takes a lot of guts to be able to take on Cisco at the peak of its power, right? The reason why no VC wanted to touch them was because they pretty much gave up on any idea that took Cisco head on, right? So you have to really give it to Khalid and Amir for being able to come up with this concept and be able to say, hey, we're going to take Cisco head on, right? That takes a lot of guts. So it's a great story for those of you who are thinking of starting companies. Nothing's impossible, right? In a lot of ways, Viptela is unique, and I have a unique perspective on this as well. As Khalid said, he and I started back in 1993 in cubes next door. We used to argue on OSPF versus EIGRP. The days where he's still technical, I'm no longer technical, but so he's always been very passionate, and that's what it takes for founders to really have that unassailable vision, right? That's what I'd call it. So as he was saying, right, for me, I had done 19 years at Cisco. I kind of told myself I'm not doing networking anymore. I spent 4 years in a cloud infrastructure company. Say Khalid and Carl Eschenbach was our board member. He was on my board at VC as well. So what really sold me on this was basically, I'll tell you straight up, it was Khalid's passion, right? I mean, multiple times he and I were on the phone. I had actually said, hey, I'm probably not going to be the right person for you, but he kept at it, right? And I think the conviction that he had was a big part of convincing me to come on board. For us, the journey from where they had established product market fit by the time I came in, they had some great customers already on board, like Gap, right, and Verizon, who were very committed. I think the challenge that we faced was the minute SD-WAN got hot, right, we had a whole bunch of companies jumping into the same field. Effectively, one of the most frustrating things we would have is we would come up with an idea, right, and we'd talk about it, and almost within a week, verbatim, our competitors would copy it, right? So what the result is when you go to a customer, the customer would say, but all of you guys are the same, right? And it'd be very frustrating for us because, Khalid obviously understands the architecture, the scale of routing, the innovations that were part of Viptela, which obviously were not being replicated in the other companies. But we had this problem of how do you, get the customers to internalize it. So, it was really sort of the journey from being able to get product market fit to true scale, because by the time Cisco actually bought us, we had done about $28 million a quarter. So we're well past the $100 million run rate, right? Which essentially means that we were on a pretty good trajectory. It really involved a couple of things. It was really about sort of making sure customers truly understood what we did, right? It was about kind of making sure that we could change our story to a point where our competitors couldn't follow us. So we went to the cloud, right? Connectivity to the cloud, which was very hard for other competitors to be able to follow and tell the same story, right? SD-WAN kind of was generic term, but we needed to kind of find the next level of, value prop without getting too technical for the audiences. So, I'll pause here. I'm sure we'll explore this a little bit more, but I think it really is about finding a great team, a great idea, and truly nothing is impossible.
We'll get Suparna to speak. So Suparna is here to speak about her journey at Jasper. Which Cisco acquired in 2016, and now it's almost kind of racing towards $1 billion business. But I think I would like to kind of speak about her journey at Jasper.
So, well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Jasper, and then maybe we can, in the discussion, we can. I got a few slides, so.
Good slide.
Don't
worry, I have a couple of
I usually do technical presentations, so not used to doing this. I needed slides. But we'll go quickly. So, how do I take you to go to the next one? Next. All right. So, how Jasper got started was Jahangir was on a vacation. He had was driving a rental car, and the check engine light came on. He was not sure what to do. It's a vacation in new town. And he thought, wouldn't it be great if the car was connected to the internet, would tell me exactly what to do at the moment? Should I stop, should I go to a mechanic, or at least route me to a mechanic nearby or something like that. So that's when he got this idea that, the car has been around for so long, it's a product that people sell. Why don't we connect it to the internet? And then the car manufacturers can actually have a recurring revenue business, connected service. And they can sell so much more. We're all familiar with this today, but back then, this is 2005, this was a brand new idea. He thought about that, and then he thought it's not just a connected car problem. There are so many things out there. Coffee machines, vending machines, airplanes, all of these things that can actually be connected. And they can go from being a product with a one-time sale to be a service, the recurring revenue model. And that's when he got this idea of, he did some mental math, and he said, there are 1 billion devices out there that we could use. And that became our vision, connecting 1 billion devices. So in order to make that happen, he knew he needed expertise in 2 distinct areas, and one was cellular networks. So he knew Daniel from before, his past life, and also an expert in software who could build up a software as a service platform. I was hired by others, so I've been part of the software team from the very beginning. So these are the 2 things that and they became his co-founders, and together they started building the plan to build a global data network. So Daniel quickly figured out how to make this happen using the roaming interconnect that all carriers use when same as cell phones that happens. Jasper actually became a wireless carrier. We have a Spectrum. We have a Spectrum back in Alaska, became a full member of GSM, got our own IMSI range, got our own MSISDN, and we became a wireless carrier. So the name originally was Jasper Wireless before we made it just Jasper. And Amit and we started building the software as a service platform that could be used to control this global network. By controlling, we basically meant three things. The first thing is to deactivate. Anybody who doesn't pay the bill gets deactivated. Anybody who's paying the bill will continue to be activated. If you use the network, we have to do a billing, provide a billing function. And then finally, if you are have an issue or the connectivity is not working, have a troubleshooting. How do you troubleshoot? How do you find what is the problem, things like that. And then this had to scale massively. We wanted to connect 1 billion devices, so it had to scale. So funding, Jahangir was the CEO of Connect Awareness. He worked with Gaurav before, so he explained the idea to Gaurav. He immediately loved the idea, helped refine the pitch to the investors, and they got their first Series A funding from Sequoia and Benchmark. And the VCs introduced them to their first customers. The first one was a very phone device, it's a card swipe, and the other one was the Garmin car navigation service that you put on your dashboard. And these two customers were unique. They had been trying to do this connectivity by going to the wireless carriers themselves and finding it really, really difficult. And they immediately got the value prop of our platform and agreed to be our first customers as soon as we built the product. So they were ready before we were ready. And we launched our platform in March 2006. So that was really the beginning. And right away we had a customer, so that was a very good start. So moving along, we signed partnership with many, many wireless carriers, AT&T in the United States, Rogers in Canada, CU in China, Reliance in India, Docomo, Japan. So that enabled us to roam all over the world and get customers that were global all over the world at the same time. So some of our customers, GM cars, Coca-Cola, vending machines, Kindle devices, Amazon Kindle devices, ChargePoint, the electric vehicles charging station. So really good traction in the market, and we were, having moving along. And so, of course, all of this was not easy. So it all came one by one, and it was over a decade, but we were moving along. So, and finally, in 2015, we had one more. So in 2015, this is just before the acquisition, we had reached about 24 million devices. So that was a big hallmark. We were getting to be known as the market leaders for IoT cloud, and this is the time we were also planning to go public. So preparing for IPO. We actually had filed our confidential S1 at that time. At the same time, our CFO was also working with Catalyst financial firm that specializes in M&A, and they introduced us to CIsco. And CIsco, of course, was very interested in the IoT market, and I think there were three things that why CIsco kind of was very interested in Jasper. First, we were the IoT market leaders. CIsco was very interested in getting into the IoT market. They were sort of the thought leaders. They introduced the IoT market, but they had yet to find a commercial success with another product. And the Jasper portfolio was kind of meshed very well with how CIsco was thinking about IoT, and together it could become a very compelling story. And finally, the recurring revenue model that Jasper had, I think this is something that CIsco is very interested in moving forward with, having more of a recurring revenue avenue. So that, I think, those were, I think, were the main reasons why CIsco found Jasper attractive. For Jasper's point of view, having the CIsco backing in IoT would get us faster to our 1 billion devices. So as opposed to being an independent public company of our own. So I think it worked well for us as well as CIsco. Of course, it was a multi-month due diligence. I was part of the whole due diligence network. Us preparing for IPO actually helped a lot in working through the due diligence process. The acquisition, the post-acquisition moving into Cisco was extremely good. I mean, I think Cisco does acquisitions so well, and so that has been a very, very good experience. What's next for Jasper? Well, we are going to be still working on our vision of 1 billion device, and with the help of Cisco movie, get there faster.
Now, let's move to our costliest acquisition. if I don't make Bhaskar uncomfortable with that statement, but I think AppDynamics also had its run, and I think Bhaskar will talk about the journey of AppDynamics.
Yeah, no, I relish it. I don't get so just the basics, a couple notes so that I make sure I take on. So founded in 2008, actually, right? And if you look at what the economy was at that point, it was a very interesting time. So 2008, April, we actually just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, so just 10 years old now. So founded by Jyoti Bansal, and then, I used to work with, both of us used to work at Wiley, and it was basically the two of us as part of the founding team at that point. Overall, we raised about 200+ million over, over the years. But Series A was 2008, right? So right from the get-go, the day we walked into the office that the VC gave us, where we started whiteboarding and started figuring out like what we want to build, when it was just the two of us, we got funded at that point. So we started off, on a pretty strong note. Series A was with Greylock and Lightspeed, so they did our Series B as well, right? So that was kind of starting point. And then obviously, in terms of the basics, we got bought by Cisco for 3.7, which one of the key things to note about that is that it's the highest multiple of revenue ever in terms of an acquisition, because it's usually when whatever revenue you have is a multiple of whatever is achieved in terms of the acquisition cost, and so that was the highest revenue. So very proud of the results that we got from there. So to talk a little bit about the starting point and how the ideas came about and et cetera, et cetera. So as I mentioned, both Jyoti and I, we were working together at a company called Wiley, right? And Wiley got acquired by CA. We were at Wiley, and during our period at Wiley, we got acquired by CA. So Wiley was a leader in the application performance monitoring space. And what that used to do was really, and focused a lot on Java, and applications at that point started becoming a little more critical to the business, right? Like applications and IT still used to be mostly back office stuff. And at Wiley, what they used to do was they used to do bytecode instrumentation where they had an agent that actually sits in the JVM, sends data, and then we would basically build intelligence around it and metrics around it. So that's kind of how we basically got into the space, right? And the thing that we really noticed during our part at Wiley was one, applications were getting a lot more distributed, right? It just used to be a bunch of logic servers talking to a database, and that was pretty much the landscape of the applications then. But they started getting a lot more distributed because I think they needed to be more agile, so they started breaking up, and now you see that as microservices, et cetera, and what's happening right now. So that was one thing, and then the other thing was they were getting super critical to the business, right? So now there are so many businesses which are software defined, right? So even if it's not a software company, think about a company like even like oil and gas companies. There's so much software that runs that drives them. So that was another reason we thought we need to kind of rethink what this space is, and that's the starting point of all the ideas that came up. So in terms of when we really started developing it and started acquiring customers, one of the interesting things is that the reason we got funding, what we got funded for was a little bit different from what we eventually went to market with. So we got funded for really capacity management and auto scaling for applications that were more or less running on VMware. And one of the things we discovered as we started talking to customers early on in 2008 after we got funding was everybody was working with virtualization and cloud and everything else, but we didn't really have enough customers who were deployed in production, right? So they were like, yeah, we have our test and pre-production kind of setup, but we're not really running in production. So that was kind of the pivot for us. So which is always in a software journey, like the startup journey, that's a very key moment. And so we kind of went back to our basics on kind of reinventing the APM space. We wanted to use that as a way of redefining it, but we kind of went back to the basics on really building solid APM around it. And the problems we saw, which is really the distributed aspect of it, and also monitoring at that point was very siloed. So people were still measuring, CPU performance and query performance and network performance. And the problem with that was that none of them gave you a sense of how the customer is experiencing the app, right? Or the customer is experiencing the business or working with the business. So that made us come up with, let's define it in a way where we measure it using what we call business transactions. That's probably kind of the core invention of the company, which really differentiated us. And so that was kind of the starting point of the technology on how to do that. Let's see, other key things. So we pivoted around October 2008 on building APM. And then we actually started talking to customers as early as April 2009. So it's about like 6 months or so. We started going out in the market, started talking to customers because we just knew that iteration early on was super important. And interestingly enough, one of the companies we talked to at that time was CIsco, when we didn't even have a V1. So, but that was always, anytime you get exposure to a live application, talking to a customer, it's always a wealth of knowledge there. So we kept at it, and we GA'd our project in late 2009, October, November 2009. So it took about a year, because we wanted to get out there sooner than later. So that was kind of a key thing that we wanted to do. And late 2009 is when we actually started acquiring customers as well. So the first customer we basically did was $2,500, right? We sold a couple of agents for the application that they wanted. And then the second customer was $3,500. And that took 8 to 10 trips to Austin just to keep working to that deal. And we're like, look, if we're gonna make $3,500 with all this hard work, it's gonna be hard. But that's how you start. You have 0 customers, you have no credibility in the market, and you have to learn. And then the other interesting deal in the first 5 or 6 was we did an ELA with a customer for $25,000, all you can eat for the rest of your life. And what happened was we were working that deal, and the customer basically, and we had a really strong level of engagement from our champion, and he got a call from a competitor, right? And then he was like, oh, I started talking to them, and they have some things that are interesting. I'm like, we were super hungry. We wanted to get out there. So we're like, yeah, $25K all you can eat. So we just did it. And that was before we had, significant amount of customers. They actually renegotiated the deal after, they PD'd us after a while, and they renegotiated the deal, and then, we fixed that. But just to give perspective, so that's like, late 2009, early 2010, so not too far away. And, we're now closing deals worth $20 million. Same product, multiple reps. So that's how you always start off. You start off, really scrappy and hungry. So that's the main thing. So we launched the company. So we were still kind of in stealth mode all of 2009 and beginning of 2010. We launched the company, built the website, and did everything, in 2010 March. And we did Series B in 2010 May. That's when we kind of knew that we're on the path. Some of these customers we acquired were very big brands, and we have that validation. So I'll talk about the exit, and CIsco acquisition, et cetera, but I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on what we really focused on, in terms of product, right? The first point was we had a product that you could download off the web and start using it. Nobody else in our space had it. So we had the guts to basically say, well, let's put it up on the web, anybody can download and start using it. And that gave us tremendous traction. The reason a lot of competition never actually had it because the APM product is much more complex. It sits within your app. So if you mess it up, it ends up crashing the app and slowing down the app, which defeats the whole point of what performance management is about, right? You can't slow it down or you can't crash it. But we were really solid about like what we built, so download on the web. And also what started happening was when we started working with customers, we said, put it in production, right? And none of our competitors ever did it. They're like, can we find a test app? Can we find something in pre-prod? Let's test it out there. And so we put it in production, and a lot of situations came up where we would talk to a customer and they said, we have your pre-product running in production already without us knowing it. So that gives you a tremendous amount of confidence on where to go, and let's just put it in production. And that was, so you have to be sort of really, really ballsy to be, at that time. The other area we focused on was cost of ownership and time to value. Monitoring is not fun a lot of times. You have to maintain it, you have multiple people configuring it and doing all that stuff. And I think that's where we really shined and we made it super easy. One of the inspirations actually for us was products like SolarWinds, because they basically said, we don't even want to have salespeople on the field. So even though they were not part of like application monitoring, et cetera, companies like those were inspirational because that's kind of really the sales model of how you do an easy to use product. And then you have to be scrappy at that time, right? You have to do whatever it takes. So we would go into a customer situation, and one of the things with our product was you have to discover application stacks, different frameworks, and sometimes you would go in and the version that you had built for was not the version there. So we would actually just turn around support for the version that we'd see overnight, right? There've been situations where, Jyoti and I were on site, and he would talk to the customers, and I would build a patch, and then put that in production. And that's how if you want to win a deal, you have to show how hungry you are, and that's part of the strategy. And also, it was very constant customer iteration, and I think one of the formulas to follow is, if you listen to Jeff Bezos talk about building products, et cetera, he always talks about listen and innovate, right? It's not listen and translate. It's not literal translation, but you have to apply differentiation on what is said by the customer and what is really kind of built out, and that's where the innovation is. And then finally, the thing we focus on is every deal is super important. So even if you are a young company looking at the second quarter, third quarter, the numbers are pretty low, you're looking at 50K, 100K, 200K, doesn't really matter. You can't put off a deal the next quarter. You have to do it at that point in time. And then it's also very important for the product teams to be connected with the sales part of the team. So I used to run product engineering, et cetera, but every quarter I basically had a list, an Excel spreadsheet of the 10 most important deals that our VP of sales thought he would close. And so I make sure that whatever happens, whatever inflow comes in terms of tickets or whatever in terms of support, we pay more attention to that. So it's very important to connect the dots in terms of things that you have, right? So those some of the key things in terms of what we focus on product, and we can get into more of it on any questions. And eventually, I think the positioning for exit, we were basically set to IPO last year, January 26th, and we were kind of all set. We filed our S1 late December around Christmas, and we were kind of good to go. And then obviously that's the time that I think things really, we started talking to CIsco late the year before that, but I think things really started getting super fast after the S1 was filed. And that's when they understood how healthy of a business we are. And we were about to float about a couple billion in the market, and they offered us, close to 4, right? So that was, really solid. The reason we thought it'd be super important is we did not want to be acquired by somebody who had a large IT management suite, right? Because then you're just doing the day-to-day integration of how you fit into a large suite. And in fact, they were a hardware company, right, primarily. But on the other hand, I think what we do and abstracting out all the changes that happen underneath us was very important for them strategically and how we fit in. Because if you look at a business transaction underneath the infrastructure and networking and all that stuff can change, but you still use business transactions as a way to manage it. So that was the partnership that we looked at. In terms of how we're doing right now, we're still super independent. We talk to a lot of companies, including people like Meraki, in terms of how post-acquisition, and Cisco has a very good reputation of being a great acquirer. They kind of leave you alone and they keep you basically growing their business, growing your own business, and so that's why it's going really well. And we just closed out a year where we grew ARR by 70%, which is even for hypergrowth companies, 10 years in, such a tremendous number. And that was the year of the acquisition, with potentially so many distracting things. So we're pretty happy with where we are in getting to the $1 billion ARR, and we're pretty much almost halfway there right now.
So our last member on the panel, this is our 200th acquisition. So JF gets a unique distinction. And JF will talk about per speaker.
Sure. So while the slides are coming up, let me first tell you for a reason that you don't know. So my first startup was actually an NVM startup back in 1998. We actually extracted controllers from like 4-system switch and Stingray and so on. And the company failed miserably, within 2 years. The market was not great. And then, I did something similar. A couple of years later, I started another company that was doing analytics for server management, for server management. And that was started in 2002, if I remember well. And the company did not fail miserably. The company is still in existence today, but it was never this. But but what I've learned from those two was that I was 10 years too early in the market. And so after that, that company in 2014, I was approached by actually a couple of incubators in the Valley that were interested in applying analytics and data science and so on for server application management and networking. And they reached out to me, and that's really how the whole thing started. So I was approached by the Fabric, you guys might know Rajan Prabhakar, and by the High with TM Ravi. And they really wanted to start a company that was applying AI for networks. And so we started pursuing networks at that point. And I was really debating, like, am I going to do a fourth startup again? Do I have the energy for doing it? And that's where really I reflected about like that 10 years. That 10-year gap gave me the energy. Maybe this one is going to be really the right one. And so anyway, so that's kind of how it's all started. And so I moved here actually in 2014 from the East Coast. It was a big gamble. I'm a lucky actually. So when you move to the Valley, north of 45, you're making a gamble, right? I sold my house, I came here, and I started a company. And so what I did is I actually hired one of the teams that I used to work with when I was at Dell in Noida, actually near Delhi. You probably all know where Noida is. So anyway, so that's kind of how we started. So we started with a few guys that met actually at the incubator. I didn't know any of my co-founder until I met them at the incubator. We had a few meetings of a few hours, and we decided within a week, okay, we're going for it. And so we got some funding there. We got an initial funding that was a seed round, and some space to start, building ideas and the business plan and so on. And within the first year, we basically raised our first round. And the company was total raised about $8 million. So I'll get a little bit more detail. But that's kind of how it all started. Maybe you can go to the next slide. So this is kind of a summary about the company as it was acquired. We were about 3 years into it. We had about 50 customers and trials going on. had actually a SaaS and on-prem offering. So the company originally was called Perspica Networks because we're planning to apply that technology, the AI to networking, and with the goal of actually being acquired by Cisco. That was really like the first thing. Cisco, was our first target, and then we were thinking also, other companies in the area. And that's, but we face a lot of challenge whenever we're meeting customers and telling us, there's no way we're going to stream that data. The bandwidth is too expensive, all of those issues. That was 2014. And so we started building a product. So we built a product for on-prem, and within 2 years, everything changed. Suddenly, bandwidth was much cheaper. We started talking with companies like Logic or Splunk or New Relic, AbbVie. We're all doing, management in the cloud. And so we really pushed hard. We said, you know what, we got to do this in the cloud because deploying these things on-prem is too long. And so we basically started to, build our cloud offering, our SaaS offering. And so, long story short, we started getting customers and so on. We got probably the highest multiple because we didn't make that much revenue. And we were acquired. But anyway, that's because we didn't have that. But we acquired some customers that were quite important, actually. If you look at their slide, I talked at the bottom about our investors, but we had the Department of Homeland Security as one of our customers. We had DHS, we had HUD, and so on. And the government, I was in DC before, I had the connections there, my network was there. And one of my friends who had a channel there says, hey, I want to bring technology and analytics to the federal government. They're craving for innovation. And so we embraced that, and we started working on, a federal business. And for a startup in Silicon Valley to work on a federal business, that's a very big challenge. But we got through the process, we got certified, and then we started seeing, invoice coming in and POs, et cetera. But at the same time, we also developed the business, in the valley. So we had customers like Pinterest, Instart Logic, some of you guys might be familiar with them. And their problem was that they had so much data, they had no way to analyze any of it. They were looking at dashboard, it was complicated, they needed help to analyze data. So as we were working with those customers, what I started realizing is that they were willing at that point, so that was 2 years ago, they were willing to actually work with us in the cloud. So suddenly we had almost infinite resources. We could actually stream the data, but there were new problems. Suddenly we needed to move the data there. So we started working on ingesting data and doing all of this, and really, building that business, building a SaaS offering. And come along, actually, AbbVie. So Bhaskar and team actually one day reached out to me and said, JS, what are you guys building? That was one of the business development. It was in BD, and says, what are you doing now? Because I've known him from the previous companies and so on. And then, made a demo, and a month later came back, hey, why don't you come and meet Bhaskar? And that day, I think it was in December of 2016. So just went there, and, these guys were going like, well, that might be a good idea, going forward there. But, it was sort of like, quote unquote, like love at first sight from my perspective. I love what they did. I had always wanted to be, with a company like this, and the offering that was providing was actually very complementary in my view. So we could help AbbVie by bringing a bunch of AI in there, and AbbVie was basically had the market. So to me, it was a way to basically bring the technology that had been working for like almost 20 years on, to bring it to the mass. And that was really like something that I wanted to do. So it was, it was not just about like the exit and making money. It was really I wanted to bring that to the mass, IT operation. I wanted to have AI help IT and automate as much as possible because of all the complexity and all of that stuff. So anyway, so long story short, that's kind of how we got to know each other. And then in January, the curveball, Cisco acquired that. Like, oh shit, that will not happen. Like, they just acquired, might as well, not talk about this anymore. So we continue. Bhaskar and team said, guys, don't worry, we really want to have you on board, but then they needed to come to Cisco. We were actually in parallel having conversations with Cisco, the investment branch, Phil, I'm sure a lot of you guys know Phil, and Rob's organization. So we were actually having parallel discussions to get funding, etc. But with all of this, we ended up converging and being acquired a little bit later. So some people talk about early due diligence and so on. For me, that was a nightmare. I don't know how to put it. It was like it was very short. It was just 1 month. But in that month, it was probably 22 hours a day. It was like so much work because we were a small company. We had like 30 employees. We had 20 of these guys were in India and 10 in the U.S. And so it was all between myself and my CEO that I had recruited along the way to do all the due diligence. We did not have like finance people. All of that was contractors. We had outsourced everything. We didn't have HR. We didn't have, admin, finance, CFO, nothing. We're a tech company with almost no staff. And so we worked like crazy, but we managed to go through that. And actually on my, I think it was my 35th wedding anniversary, like I'm dating myself. But that's the day I actually signed a contract. That's part of the reason why I got that tattoo. But anyway, so long story short, from my perspective was, I knew that the kind of technology we were building would be very, very difficult to bring standalone to the market. So part of the strategy was really to find the right home for the technology at the right time. Okay? Before we had too many customers, and but we needed some customers, right, that demonstrated that it was viable and so on. So positioning this was clear in my mind, and that was through the previous value. Previous value, quote unquote, through the previous company. Integration. I feel let me just flip to one slide. Before I talk about the integration, maybe why CIsco, or Dynamics acquired the company. What did they find interesting in the company? One was we provided a stream-based processing. So instead of analyzing the data when it's in the data lake, we analyze it on the fly as it was coming in. And one of the things that we've done, it was on the previous slide, we were able to analyze north of 10 million data points per second. So that's fairly high velocity of data coming in. We're talking about like a 10 gigabit pipeline of data, full-time 24/7 and ingesting and processing. So that's the scale of the technology that we have developed. And that was, by the way, on a single ingest node. So we were really going for super high scale. And that's where you roll your sleeve in and you start doing it. Like you need to make it happen, you make it happen. Anyway, so that's the stream-based. The other thing was AI is very hot as a topic, but AI in general is not very useful. You need to specialize it. So, what we were bringing at the table was an IT perspective for AI and a lot of different things. So domain systems, machine learning, that understood everything that is special about IT data. Like out of order, you lose a lot, some data is scrappy, but there's also specific types of data in IT. Whatever event, telemetry. So we had that understanding. So we developed algorithms that were really special. And finally, it was a team. The tech and talent acquisition was not about our customers. It was about getting that technology and integrating it within the AppD product. So one of the first things we did is that the company got acquired. We trusted the product. We obviously kept our obligation and with the customers we had, especially with the federal government, we're still running the product. Want to have more, but we started integrating right away. Actually, I was telling Bhaskar on the way here this morning. I saw the demo, our first integration demo, where I could see the technology being integrated and so on. It's not ready, obviously, and undisclosed data. But I was really, really happy this morning to see that finally done. So that's it. That's kind of our story. What's next? For me, what's next is actually to be with the company, grow and bring to market that technology. That's what I want to do in my next 2 years while I'm here, is to bring this to all Global 2000 to use that product. Thank you.
So we are 10 minutes behind in this time. We'll try to kind of catch up because I want to make sure that we're not coming in the way of your summer food and maybe a trip to some of the startups here. So what we will do is we'll get into the panel. Before we get in, I think I just want to put in a plug for CIsco Corp Dev team. It's a wonderful team. I've heard a lot of good things about how Cisco does acquisitions, has been doing it since 1993, and how well they kind of treat the teams and how well they kind of give them the freedom. We've got a few people to say that, but I've been, in Cisco for this long, and I've always felt Cisco has that special skill. So all of that is possible with Hilton, and he's actually kind of the one running the show. And there are $2 billion Cisco has in investments across 27 different countries, and there are 120 direct investments, which we are sitting on the company board and trying to drive, how that company is moving forward in terms of startup ecosystem, and another 40 of them indirect investments. And Cisco continues to do this with 42 people dedicated to just keep it. It's almost like a sensor. They're kind of sensing every market, every place, and we kind of have these kind of networking is one big thing that people recognize, but Cisco does a lot more than that, right? Networking, then obviously cloud, big data, IoT, collaboration, security, and now obviously, SD-WAN, that kind of falls into networking. Data center, there's a lot of work going on in the data center. Analytics, we don't talk about that as a separate market, but as it relates to IT. So Cisco continues to kind of do that, and I think these kind of events always kind of help get Cisco to kind of reach out to more people and get them connected to this ecosystem so we can move this ecosystem forward. So really want to thank M&A team for that. They are not here. I wanted to have somebody from the M&A team to be here to see how people are appreciating their work. So just want to call out their, I'm sure they'll get to know about it later.
We've recorded it, so they'll get to see.
Great. Wonderful. So with that, let's get into the panel. I think it's been pretty serious here. I think everybody's been talking about how passionate about the products that they were on, like, Khalid and Praveen talked about Viptela, I think I talked to Suparna today morning at 8:30, and she prepared like 20 slides today. Like that tells me that, she had 10 years at Jasper, so I'm sure she must have written a lot of code. Definitely, Jasper, and the story, obviously, when you talk to Jahangir, very simple man. You talk to him, you don't even feel like he's the CEO of a company, right, that has kind of really got that big a business. And he's so simple, and I think you can learn how to be humble with him. And then at Dynamics, Jyoti is not here, but we've got Bhaskar, who's been from the beginning, and he talked about all the hard work that goes in terms of staying with the customer. And then JF, his passion on AI, you can see it now, right? And I think he's so happy to be here, and hopefully we can get him that final product. Hopefully Cisco can deliver that. So with that, let's start on a humorous note, and each one of you can share something that probably not many people know about you, even though you work with so many people, maybe the passion, or maybe something that you do outside of work, or maybe something that you do that probably will connect you to some of the people here in the room. So we'll start with Praveen.
Great. Yeah. I'm thinking on my feet here. So my son's a teenager now, so he's acquired my propensity for doing crazy things. So one of the things we do every summer is at the end of school we pick all the highest, craziest roller coasters in the US and go ride them. So that's what I do for fun with him. It's I'm getting old for this, so my back's not taking it as well as it used to, but it's a good way for me to really sort of be scared out of my wits. Which helps you reset. So, that's what I do for fun. But, I think, look, one of the things I really enjoy doing is, we are truly blessed to be in the Bay Area, to be able to be in the middle of, people who are bubbling with ideas, right? People who want to change the world. And, I spend a lot of time with, entrepreneurs, with folks looking to, explore new ideas. Now, officially, my role at SoftBank, we look at things that fundamentally are 5-10 years ahead that are going to be transformational. So keeps you intellectually challenged. And trust me, I'm sure these guys will attest to, a startup is very much like a roller coaster, if not more. So I think I do them physically, and I've had the opportunity to kind of be in one, and that's one of the amazing things that you get to do being in the Bay Area.
Wonderful. Thank you, Khalid.
So I'll tell you a funny story about that Viptela, what happened. So our first customer was a healthcare provider, and we sold them equipment. Around the same time, I was evaluating what healthcare we would choose for the company. So this is around the time, our sales guy said, we made the sale and we're expecting the payout. So that same Friday evening, I was leaving out of town, and I got a check, I got an envelope which stated the name, and I put it on the side thinking, okay, another offer to look into healthcare for the employees. And I leave. Now, I was out on an international travel for about 8 to 10 days. Our VP of sales is calling the customer almost every day saying the check has not arrived. And they're looking at their accounting, they're following up everywhere, and they said the check was delivered to this address of the tenant. That check is sitting in my office, which I thought was an offer for a healthcare plan for the company. I'm international, sleeping, 2 a.m. in the morning, I got a phone call from our VP of sales, and it literally said, "Are you insane?" I said, "What happened?" He said, "I've been chasing down this $1.4 million check that's sitting on your desk." And I said, "Wait a minute, I thought that was a healthcare offer for our company." And that check was our first check, which we had framed it with Tella, and he specifically said that he tells that story to everybody, that our first revenue, this man almost didn't take it.
Interesting, very interesting. Go ahead, Suparna.
So I shared with Ravi this morning, I am a trained classical dancer, and I actually had a dance school before I started working at Jasper. So that's something I love doing, and that's also one of the ways I know Deepti. We have been dancing together for many years. So yeah, that's what I do in my spare time. I also have 2 boys to play.
Wonderful, thank you.
Dancing your way to life.
Go ahead, Bhaskar.
Yeah, so I think something that usually not everyone knows about probably is when I started out. So I started out in India in Hyderabad, and my first job was an Indian startup called Pramati, which is, interestingly, a product company. And India doesn't really have a lot of product companies. I would, honestly, I would want to see that change. And I think that's where I get a lot of my roots from. Like, we were very passionate about building products, and things like that. Post that, I moved here, and then I got to Wiley, which was my second, and Apple is really my third startup. But yeah, that's something not everyone knows about, and super proud about that part.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah.
So actually, I don't know if it's funny, but one of the things that is very unusual, I think, is I had one of my sons, who's 28 now, moving in the Valley earlier this year, or last year, I should say. That came and said, "Dad, I want to be in the family business." I said, "What is that?" "I want to be in startup." Yeah, when I said startup, so, we wanted to learn how to, how do I do a startup? Because I had a lot of ideas on how we build a product from the ground up, and I had done multiple. So anyway, so Louis actually, joined as a product manager and, got in the rope and all of this. And now he's actually an employee at FD and at CIsco, part of the team. So the not funny thing was that when we were being acquired, the deal almost fell apart because I could not have a family member reporting to me. And ethics in the UK started actually, no, you cannot have that. You're going to have to either let him go or you're going to have to. I said, "You guys are crazy. That's not working." So we ended up, solving the issue, reporting in a different team. But I thought it was interesting.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's kind of get to a little bit of serious questions. I think, one thing that I just want to check with people is there are going to be some targeted questions for each one of them, but some of them are kind of common questions, so we'll stay on the common questions theme. Getting into a startup is a big decision, right? I'm sure, some of you in the room can kind of relate to this, but I'm sure everybody has a different criteria. What I would like to hear from the panel is, as they were trying to kind of get on their journey, I'm sure at different times in this, right? What were the 2 or 3 things that you considered in order to make that call? And did that happen to be a right call or not? And when did you find out? So we can go with Khalid, since you've been.
So I think the most difficult thing for decision for me was, and I've said this in a lot of public forums, is healthcare. It is one of the biggest decisions that stops you from going to a startup. And so I have 3 kids, and although I joined CIsco early, but CIsco had up and down, so I didn't have that
Down
mostly down. And I didn't have that much savings. So the thing that stopped me for almost a year was my healthcare and concern about how would if anything goes wrong, then whatever you have, you're going to go bankrupt. I think that was the biggest reason that stopped me for almost a year. And I said this in a lot of public discussions as well, that if that problem is solved, you'll have more entrepreneurs in this country. I'm being one of them. I waited almost a year.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I come at this a little bit differently, obviously, not as a founder, but as a CEO. And yeah, I mean, I think startup takes conviction, right? Startup takes a lot of belief. And, I think for me, I just sort of come off a CEO gig, which is a mid-sized company. We grew from about 100 million revenues to about 2 billion before it was acquired, right? And the natural progression was to go into one of the larger companies. And I think, one of the things that was really a big challenge for me was to say, okay, I got to have real conviction around the idea and the team, right? For me, that was really the foundational thing. I've had now enough experiences. I had the opportunity to work with some amazing teams, whether at Cisco, Ravi knows we built, some great platforms, ASR 9000, 7600, and such like. It doesn't really matter, in my mind, actually, the product doesn't matter. Market doesn't matter. Team matters the most, right? Because I think if you have the right team, you can go conquer any challenge. So it was really about, for me, the team, right? And I think, as I mentioned earlier, the conviction that Khalid had, right, when we met, and talking to him, he never gave up, right? And I think it was something where it allowed me to say, okay, if somebody is this passionate about a space, then it's something that I feel more comfortable, right, as somebody who has not been with the idea from day one, to be able to jump into it, right? So that's what I'd say is the most important criteria.
Thank you.
So for me, actually, I would reverse the question, because I've been doing startups all my life.
Family business.
And do I want to join a big company? And I've been really afraid of that because of politics. And so it's, for me, it's been a natural thing. That's who I am. I like to create and build, companies from the ground up.
Wonderful. Bhaskar?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, because I was looking forward to working on my ideas and dreams and things like that, so I had the full conviction, and nothing was really stopping me. The only area that was a factor, and I had to take a hard call on it, was immigration. So I didn't have my green card yet, and I was waiting for one state to the other. I'm sure most of you know all that whole documented process. So eventually I had to make a call on whether I sort of jump and start to do it without worrying about what really happens at that stage and if that goes sideways. And eventually I made the right call because I didn't care about it and I did what I wanted to. Maybe it took me 2 or 3 extra months, but I made the right call. And similar to what Khalid was saying, I think that's an area which I think if you solve it well, you'll have a lot more. That's a pretty good problem in general.
We will write a letter to Trump tonight. Yeah. He can fix both healthcare and immigration. Okay, so let's get to Suparna.
So, coincidentally, I actually got my green card when I was working at Oracle, and that's when I decided that I could take a risk. So, I waited till I got my green card, and I always wanted to be part of a really small team and a team that could. I really do believe in taking something from 0 to 1, and that's a very magical moment when you can have nothing and then have a product that is something working. And I wanted to be part of that journey. My husband has been doing it 2 or 3 times, and I was waiting for my green card. The day I got my green card, I about a week or so, I left Oracle, and I was looking for a group of people I could do it with, and Jasper just happened to be there. And I think the team was the most important thing. I felt so comfortable after talking to Jahangir and Amit. I had a 2-year-old baby, and I was wondering if I could, survive it or not. But talking to them, this was not going to be their first startup. They were seasoned entrepreneurs, and I just decided to just do it. If I failed, I would have valuable experience, and if I didn't fail, then it would be something. And it turned out to be a very good decision. Definitely, I couldn't have asked for a better journey.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Suparna. So we'll kind of go for a little bit of targeted things here. So I think one question I would like to ask Praveen, and maybe a kind of a question to Khalid as well. I know you've been kind of a founder, you've been through the journey, and then you bring in Praveen at a time when you probably already had a definition of a product, you kind of have a market. You bring in somebody to be the CEO. And what goes on at that time in terms of chemistry, because I know it's the team that matters, right? That chemistry is what keeps you together. And keeping that health insurance aside, right? But bringing somebody from outside, especially CEO, and I've seen in some startups that kind of creates a lot of challenges. And I want to hear from both of you, like one from founder, how did you receive Praveen? Now, how did Praveen obviously receive the team, and how did you make this work? And obviously, you got to exit this. So I would like to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I had to struggle with this because I was one who was actually very supportive of bringing Praveen. And obviously, there is a dynamics change. I think the first job which Praveen had to do was to make people comfortable. Because from day zero when we started, we were about 3 guys, Amir, myself, and Ramesh, who's still with CIsco. We used to be driving around every place, and from idea, then we built the idea, then we created the team, we hired people. So there was always a very passionate affinity towards everything you've done. And it's like you're handing over your baby to somebody. And that, I think, from my perspective, I've known Praveen for a longer period of time, and I had that comfort, and or sort of saying, look, Google wouldn't have been Google without that dictionary. So we have to see that there comes a time that we have to be more open-minded, bringing somebody who will take it to the next level. Because I had never built a company. Praveen had built large organizations, built a company. Let's use that experience. So yeah, we had our emotional ups and downs. From my side of it, I was very supportive of bringing Praveen, but the other team, Praveen had to make the rest of the people comfortable. And I felt that he had the capability. So that's why I kept on pushing him. So that's the thing that you have to learn to say, at what point there should be somebody who's going to take you to the next level.
Wonderful. Thank you. Praveen, your view.
Yeah, I think it's, one thing is really important to remember in leadership, right? Leadership essentially means that, you have to earn the responsibilities on you to earn the credibility with the team. It's not the other way around. It's always the way I've looked at things, whether it was, running a business unit or running a company, you really have to kind of approach this as what value can you add to the team. And I think, there were a couple of things that were really important here. Like one was, we had this conversation with Khalid, was pretty transparent in terms of, hey, here's the things we're doing well, here's the things where we need help, right? And I think it was important for him to be able to articulate that and make me comfortable to say, okay, they really understand where they are in the journey and where they want to go. And the other aspect of this is also, I think, when you go into a team that's already been functioning really well, right? Particularly in a startup environment where they've seen tremendous ups and downs, there's a level of trust that has been established, right? So you're the new player to that, and you have to establish that trust. And as much as the relationship is there, really your actions are how can you earn trust. And as I mentioned, right, I think of this as you have to add value, right? You have to earn credibility with all the team, right? So when they look at you and say, by bringing you in, what can you do for this company? What can you improve, right, for the job that we've already done? And for me, it was really sort of, I focused on three things, right? One was, how do we change the perception of the company in the market to be able to differentiate, right? How do you accelerate the go-to-market? It's something that I've done a long time, and, we were sort of bumping along. We were getting good traction, but sort of not quite breaking away, right? So that was an area which I could add value in. And I think third is, as we started to get some of these strategic options, the fact that, I was able to sort of, I had a great relationship with the Cisco folks and be able to kind of manage that negotiation, which was kind of tricky. I mean, I can tell you that we didn't start off at the point that he and I remember very, very well the first offer Cisco gave us, right? So to be able to navigate from where that was to where we ended up was something that, again, I dealt with a lot of these situations before. So that's really what it is. I mean, you have to think of yourself as a member of the team, not the CEO or, somebody who's everybody reports to. You are a member of the team, and you put your shoulder to the wheel and push hard, right? So I think that's really the most important thing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Praveen. So we'll go to Suparna now. I think, I was talking to her in the morning today. She had some very interesting story, and when I was asking about the culture of any team. And I said, especially startup, you kind of die by team, or you kind of rise by the team. And I asked her, you kind of are a dance teacher, you kind of got into this, and you're in Jasper, startup, you got a 2-year-old baby. Tell me, right, how do you define culture, and what did you kind of learn from these things? And share some story to tell me. So I would like to ask her to share that story with all of you.
Yeah, so I was just trying to relate, as a dance teacher, sort of when you're thinking about a choreography, you don't think about the individual dancers. You think about how the story will come together, how the whole thing composes. And I was just telling Ravi that I always think of that when I'm putting together the team for any project. So start with what you want the whole thing to look like in the end, and just like a choreography, who is going to be the hero, who is the heroine, who is the villain. Everybody has sort of a role, and in a startup, it's important.
I didn't know there's a villain role too, but glad to hear that.
Without the villain, the hero can never come.
Maybe devil's advocate. Maybe it's a devil's advocate who's trying to challenge you. No, I'll get it.
Absolutely. You need those anti-voices for you to be completely convinced that this is the right way to go. If everybody is agreeing in the team, that never works, right? You have to have those healthy arguments. So, thinking about that, putting the team together, having people do the best they can in that role. Of course, in a startup, you have very few people, so you have to maximize on their strengths and kind of put together that thing. So I think having that dance experience in a very strange way helps me work in a startup and kind of put the whole thing together in perspective.
Wonderful. I think I was very inspired when she told me in big companies there is so much of me, right? And then when it comes to startup, I mean, I kind of found that story very inspiring. I said, I'm going to do something, at least today I'm going to do something different at work, right? Especially we as leaders, this is something that we have to practice before we can ask others to do. So thank you, Suparna, for sharing that. So coming to now, Bhaskar. I know Bhaskar and Jyoti started these two people, and I know they worked together in the previous startup, but as a company, stays on for 10 years, right? How do you kind of make the founders run the culture? And founders, obviously, they know each other, but then the team becomes bigger. So I'd like to hear your story about the culture. Like, how did you establish that culture? And obviously, were you in the way, or were you kind of, letting the culture develop as the company grew? So I'd like to hear your story on the culture.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. Because early on, you try to be close to pretty much everything you do, right? Whether it's your build systems, whether it's the first sort of, like product that you produce, or all of the hiring decisions. We actually used to have a situation where everybody we used to hire would present to everybody else in the company, like any potential candidate, and then we'd ask them questions and things like that. But obviously, you outgrow it at some point, especially with the rate at which we're going. We're close to 2,000 people now, and it's been doubling like every other year. So you tend to hold on to a lot of decisions. You tend to hold on to everything. So like one example I can recall was obviously I used to really oversee the product side of things, what we're building and everything else, but I was also very active on the field. So I pretty much went into every proof of concept we did. Right? I was on site looking at like how the product's performing, what feedback are you getting, especially because there's times when the product shines, there's times when it's really embarrassing, and that's when you really learn the most. So we came to a point where we actually had like a full-fledged sort of pre-sale team, still small, but I was still going on each of the POCs. And at some point it became one of those situations where they're like, when are you going to stop doing this? And I think those are moments when you realize that subconsciously you're just holding on and trying to do too much. But at the same time, people appreciate that you care so much, even as you're starting to become successful. I think those are the attributes that you really make sure the team kind of realizes. So sometimes you do have to get into their hair just to make them realize, the passion needs to be carried through, but you have to keep checking yourself, otherwise you will never scale. So we started doing that at some point, consciously, versus always being super obsessed and being sort of, trying to just be on top of things most of the time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bhaskar. So we'll get to JF. I think, one thing that caught my attention with him was I looked at his LinkedIn. He's a PhD, right, from Columbia University. And if you see, he has not given up on this thing about automating IT operations since then. And he hasn't found success, but then he kept at it. And today, if you ask anybody in the Valley, the hottest technology is AI and machine learning, which he has been pursuing at the time when that was like a science fiction. I remember studying in college, and that was something I wouldn't pick up because I thought that was science fiction, right? It wasn't really useful. So, what kept you going, and like, what would you advise those people where the day they are working on it, there is a lot of negative criticism. Probably you believe in it, but not many people. Rejections. I think how do you deal with that situation?
That's a tough question, actually. I guess I was, first I was inspired when I was at Bell Labs. That's really where it started. I was asked by these guys, by Brian and Dennis, to figure out a way to use expert system back then. Expert system to troubleshoot the last mile, because that was the most expensive, task when you have problems with the network to send technicians. And so I started developing models and thinking about how can we automate the troubleshooting and so on. That was in the early 90s, like 91, 92. Anyway, so I always believed that there were better ways to do that job. And then over the years, then I was sysadmin in the lab, and then I started, one of the companies I was talking about, the previous startup we had at Bandit Exchange, where we're using game theory to price like spot market and stuff like that, pricing bandwidth. And I was actually running the equipment. I was configuring the router. I was like splicing the fiber, doing all of that stuff. And I just, I've always believed that there are better ways to do that work. And automation is always there at the forefront. So I believed it. So that was one thing. And the other thing is when I was at Bell Labs, one thing I realized, and it was that I prefer to write software than to teach or than to be an academic professor. So I made that decision while I was doing my PhD that I would finish my PhD, but I would develop software because that was much more fulfilling. So I just keep going, but I leveraged the strength that I had developed over the years, which were some strength around using mathematics. How do you apply mathematics to real life problems as an engineer? So I wanted to build systems that were founded, that had a solid foundation, not just hacks. Because what I was seeing when I look at IT is a bunch of sysadmins that were hacking their way around. And I just believed that was not the right way to do it, and I just continued. And the realization, and I was very serious, the realization that 2 or 3 of my first startups, it became successful 10 years later. That's really what I said, I'm going to give this another try. And that was the right call. And within 3 years, we built from nothing to being acquired by CIsco, which was finally the realization.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, Jay. So we'll ask one more question. I'll ask audience to kind of prepare their questions to the panel. Obviously, we've talked about a lot of success, and you know that the people who take risks, right, they learn more from mistakes than from the success. And I'm sure each one of them have their stories. I would like to kind of have them share what was the biggest risk they've taken, and the one that kind of costed them a failure, but obviously learned a lot from it, which made them a better leader, better entrepreneur, maybe a better company they built. Think about it as I'm kind of coming through. I'll go random because I don't want to put Praveen always on the first, right? So he's looking at me like, why did I next to this guy? So I think obviously we would like to kind of hear from you on failure is part of life, and obviously taking risks comes that probability. So maybe Bhaskar, what was the biggest risk you took, and the one that translated to may not be a positive experience that made you a better leader or better entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think failure is definitely a part of it. I think one of the things to remember about failure is failure teaches you what not to do. That's one of the aspects of how you kind of look at it. In terms of risks, I think I talked about it briefly, and I think that was, at least what comes to my mind, and it's less about sort of me being a leader, but just in terms of the company, is the decision for us to really go hard after applications in production, because that could pretty much just kill your company, because you go into a few situations and you don't do well, and you don't even get opportunities, and it worked out pretty well. So that's an instance where it really worked out well. I think in terms of the other ones, which a couple of them, I guess didn't work out well, was mostly related to personnel decisions, right? So I think what happens is when you start hiring people in the beginning, some people are very suited to like a 10 people, 20 people, 30 people team. Some people are not suited to when you grow to a certain stage. Things don't really scale with them because of their style of working, how they work. But early on, you're hanging on to sort of like the last part of one day, you're going on to the next one, and you're just really conservative in making decisions on, making personnel changes. And I think those are the ones that cost us the most, right? So the one thing I would always say is when you're building a team for the long run, you have to figure out what your pillars are, and you have to be maniacal about finding long-term leaders for those pillars. Right? If you don't do that and you really sit on your decisions, saying, well, maybe we'll get to the next stage and then we'll find a better leader, that costs you in the long run. And you have to be a little more aggressive in thinking about those versus just holding on to not making a change. Sometimes not making a change really hurts you a lot. So that was probably the biggest learning for me as a leader.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bhaskar. Suparna.
Yeah, so many failures. You have to choose from them. So one of the, I don't know whether it's a project, it's a huge project that we took on as a company was to launch wireless network, cricket wireless network. And we got this, we won this contract back in 2011 or 2012. This is not a regular IoT business, but launching smartphones, the prepaid smartphone plan, competitor to Boost Mobile and others, seen as of cricket wireless. So it was a different kind of project for our company, and I was running that project. It was one of those things that was completely different. We had to build so many new things to support the smartphone, voicemail, PCR activation, etc. So, and the timeline to launch was just 6 months. So we signed the contract in August. We were going to launch in February. So tremendous work, and it felt like a roller coaster, really roller coaster. Every day, everything would change, and we had to just, and the specs would change, the idea would change, the concept would change, but the deadline would never change. The launch would fail. And we had to work with multiple partners, AT&T, Amdocs, everybody, and then it was the team all over US. So complete roller coaster ride and a lot of chaos. but we managed to launch it, and it completely stretched our team. It was a small team. We were hiring, we were specing, we were writing code at the same time. But in the end, when we launched, we had a lot of issues. We worked on it, but by the time we stabilized, AT&T sort of decided that it was not the way to go. They took the business back. So you can call it a failure, but in the end, I think it really prepared Jasper for prime time. At its peak, we supported 6 million subscribers on the Cricket Wireless, and it was very, very stable at the peak. But the decision to take the business back was already done by AT&T. But from those failures or things, it really prepared our team to run the software as a service, as a real service, which was, because the activations for the cricket, the SLAs are completely different. These are not IoT devices that, like a vending machine or something. This is somebody's cell phone. So if it doesn't work, you had to, it didn't matter, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., they would call you, and I was almost every night, I was getting calls back to back. But it prepared us. It prepared our team to scale. We found ways to not get that 3 a.m. call. And we got very creative. We got, in the morning when we would come to work, we would say, how can this problem be prevented? Not just this problem, but this class of problems prevented, because I never want to get my 3 a.m. call again. So, it really prepared us for prime time. So, that was one failure that got us to the final success, I think.
Great. That's great. I think those of us, at least Cisco, managing anything as a service is really not our art, because we kind of sell products. Obviously, then people, install them. When they have a problem, they go to TAC, they kind of raise a case and come to it in the morning. And when you run a SaaS service, right, and this is what I kind of really enjoyed when Suparna was telling me, there is no such thing, right? It doesn't work, it's on your, and I know Amazon kind of does it, that's the way it works. There is no development engineer, escalation engineer, there's no 10 people, there's only one. And I think Suparna kind of said they tried this before anybody really got to even make an attempt. And I really kind of applaud that even though that cricket didn't succeed, that learning obviously made them a better company, and they're kind of helping Cisco do the same. So really, I think learning from a failure is probably something that we should not think badly about, right? I think sometimes it kind of makes you a better person. So I want to hear from Praveen. I'm sure he must have gone through this many times as well.
Yeah, as Suparna said, many failures. So, I think there are a couple of things that sort of really interesting, right? That sort of really shake your sort of understanding of where you are, right? I just started as CEO at VCE. It was my first CEO job. I think 2 weeks in, I had a meeting with the CIO of Visa, right? And it was a pretty important customer for us. We were trying to convince them to sort of move away from buying all these discrete components, buying a converged infrastructure system. And I started my pitch. My sales guy was there. We were all kind of I'd done a bunch of preparation. But 20 minutes into the presentation, basically the CIO said, stop, right? I don't think this product is for us. I have a team of people who are going to build this. This actually doesn't make any sense to me at all, right? And the meeting was like boom. It's never happened to me before. Where the customer basically, where you're so disconnected from the customer in terms of their understanding of what they want and what you're pitching. And the unfortunate part was actually the same thing happened to me, a couple of other times as well. So it really makes you kind of step back and say like, oh, is it me? Is it the product? Is it sort of, timing? What is it? And it's not a very pleasant experience, by the way, when you're sitting in front of a customer and the customer says, I don't think what you're selling makes any sense. So it was literally, that was it. So, and here I am, first-time CEO, my team's looking at me going, what's going on? Like this whole thing's falling apart. So, lots of councils, now you go back and you say, okay, we're not really telling the story right. So we focused a lot on just kind of saying, look, we know there's value because, we have a couple of customers who love this product. It's just, so you really focus on, okay, how do you sort of, what do you take from that, right? How do you tell the story? And to kind of fast forward, we won a $25 million order from Visa, right? So once we kind of got back in, we actually said, you know what, let's do a bake-off, right? We're happy to go up against HP, IBM, right, who were our competitors at that time, so let's do a bake-off. And we were able to demonstrate to the customer that we could basically cut the time and the cost that they were by almost, 50%, right? And they gave us the order. So you really kind of learn fast in those situations. But as a leader, I think those situations really kind of test you to say, the whole thing, like the product right? I mean, as a person, right, somebody who's supposed to be, again, you're sort of in the spotlight, right? You're supposed to carry your team's message, and you fall apart there. So that's one. The other thing is way earlier, actually. I don't know, maybe even you might remember this. This is a product decision. We were building a line card for one of the Cisco routers, the GSR, at that time, and I was the general manager, and my team basically came to me and said, hey, we can't put IPv6 into this thing. It's going to slip the project 6 months, right? And we were in competition with Juniper, but Juniper was really coming after us really, really hard. And I made the decision, all right, fine, let's not do V6 and go release the product. And that was a really terrible decision because that product was dead on arrival, right? Now, the reality is, even today, IPv6 is not deployed anywhere, right? But this is almost 10, 12 years ago. It was a fundamental requirement for us to be in the market. So I learned a really hard lesson at the time, which is to kind of say, look, sometimes you have to take a step back, really think hard about the trade-off that you're trying to make here. Building the right product is way more important than 6 months. Now, it so happened that we slipped 6 months anyway. Actually, we slipped 12 months, right? So it was one of those things where you kind of think back and say, you got to basically listen to your customers, no matter what, right? And sometimes the trade-off is a really tough one, and it is a hard way to learn that lesson. But I think at the end of the day, again, we were able to keep the customers. This was Japan. NTT was the customer. We were able to keep the customer because we were able to kind of find workarounds. Engineers are smart and find a way to kind of get V6 working for their specific requirements. But again, these things kind of stick with you, right? Hard experience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Praveen. So we've got JF and Khalid also kind of need to answer this question. I just want to see, you're running a little short on time. You've got so many questions to ask. I think the panel has been quite, thorough in their answers, and I think I'm also not kind of, rushing them. But what I would like to do is see if we can take some questions from the audience.
If you have questions, raise your hand so that we know.
Lot of questions. You guys are up for more time. Okay, we'll go with maybe who we want to go to.
Can I take some of the microphone? Okay, who was there?
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me go to
When I wanted to ask you a question, because we do know we have less women in technology and a lot of conversation about work-life balance and Me Too and all that stuff. So how did you manage multiple balls and stayed in the industry and you're shining? So what is the secret? As they say, for every successful man, there is a woman behind, and I'm assuming maybe for your success, there is your husband behind your success. So just share with us a little bit more.
Thanks. I think there were three things that I think is important for women. The first one, which I strongly believe in, is just do it. We always think about why this is going to be hard, why this is going to be difficult, why all the reasons why I will fail. But just put yourself out there, do it. And then that I tell everybody I come across. The second thing is to be very comfortable in your skin. As women, we are very quick to say, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, I'm not good at this. And we, highlight our failures a lot, but not necessarily own our successes. So it's important to own your failures, learn from them, but also own your success. Be very proud of who you are, what you have accomplished, whatever you accomplish. And the final, the most important thing is to surround yourself with friends, with allies, with mentors, with champions who will look out for you, help you, and I think that is probably the secret of my success, having a wonderful, wonderful team that I have worked with. I think I'm very lucky to have had very good mentors my entire life, and definitely a very, very supportive husband helps a lot.
Well said. We'll take one more. Yeah, go ahead. I think somebody in the back. Oh, go ahead. Oh.
Okay?
Hey, thank you. It's a great panel, and thanks for putting together such a wonderful panel. And thanks Ravi for being such a great moderator. This question is mainly for Bhaskar. Maybe it could be applicable for everyone. So one of the things you mentioned is that your product ideas go through multiple iterations, and what you started with might not be the what you ended up with, right? And also you also made one of the quotes: listen to the customers, but in a way, right? Not just translate. So the question I have is, at what point of time that you kind of came up with this, jump in the idea, which really succeeded, which made you a successful product? So is it by listening to the customer, or you just got up one fine morning and then you found this is a brilliant idea?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So one of the books that's actually very relevant is if you look at how Google works. So the main thing they talk about there, which is very relevant to a product that is rooted in technology, a product that is rooted in that is super technical, is they always talk about a technical insight, right? So a technical insight is an idea or an invention which really helps you differentiate in terms of what the product is. Because it's not just what use cases you're tackling, but how elegantly you do it and how you differentiate. So as engineers, I think that's something we have conviction on in creating something. And if you're able to really, so we kind of always have thoughts of, thinking in that area. The thing that you learn over time as we go through the pivot and everything else is, how do you structure it as a product? How do you structure it as a business idea? And how do you actually pitch it? So it's a combination, but there's always the technical insight part, right? Whether it is the whole search algorithm or whatever that Google had with and multiple ideas, and that's ultimately what makes the product special. And then you learn how to package it as you go through talking to customers, interviewing real users who give you feedback directly about what you're talking about, and then you basically know what it is. And early on, one of the things that helps a lot is very direct and harsh feedback, right? So like when we did the user interface for the first time, some of the reactions we got from people, and that's why you work more with friendlier customers who are giving you more direct feedback. So they looked at the UI and they said, I don't even know what user you're building this UI for, right? And that kind of forces you to focus versus, putting up like a UI that's super generic. So there are things like those. Yeah.
Thank you. Right.
So for us, the biggest reason that we actually didn't pivot much was we had very, very close ties to customers. So I initially came out of field, so from major financial. In fact, I was very close to Verizon MPLS network. So having that direct feedback, as we were building products, we used to go and, in fact, we introduced a couple of big customers to our investor rather than investor introducing us to customers. So we had such close ties to our customers that we used to, before we did anything, we had about 5 or 6 big, large customers, one carrier, one very big healthcare provider and two very major financials. We used to talk to them on regular basis and go and say, what do you think if we did this? Because at the end of the day, every customer wants to avoid a 3 a.m. call. If you can help them solve a 3 a.m. call and their engineer with a half-sleep brain able to isolate the problem, they will love you for that. So for us, the biggest benefit that we had, we were extremely close to the customer. And anytime you're building a company, you are a team of very good engineers. Make sure you find somebody in early days in business development who brings close customer relationships. It will help your product go very smooth because this is exactly what they're hurting. They'll tell you what they're hurting. And I think that was one of the advantages we had because of close customer relationships.
Thank you, Khalid. Yes.
Oh man, I have so much pressure here. Hi, thank you so much. Really appreciate the panel here. So my question is about reflection. So how important has reflection been for you for driving success? And be it, what are some of the strategies you've used, be it for self-management, managing the team, or managing the organization, culture, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think, at the end of the day, I mean, you really have to remember this is not about you, right? When you think about sort of the impact that you want to have, come at this from a leadership perspective. Some of the founders can talk about their view as well. I think you really, sometimes you just sort of go through, particularly when you're in, pretty intense, hyper growth sort of scenarios, you don't really have a lot of time to think and process, right? You're just kind of reacting as you go. But you have to sort of be very, as I said before, the most important thing is about the team, right? And how the team dynamics. And for me, it's always been really about, what am I bringing to the team? How is the team reacting? Are we functioning at the highest level of efficiency as we can? Over the course of my career, I've sort of had teams of different capabilities, almost oddball teams, right? People who kind of come to the team from another team where they don't have a good reputation or whatever, and we've been able to sort of bring that together to make it work, primarily because you sort of understand that not everybody's perfect, including yourself, and you have to be able to sort of identify what you're good at, what you bring to the table as much as everybody else does. And that's how kind of you make the sum more powerful than you individually, right? So, you talk about reflection. I think it's really more about sort of self-awareness of your capabilities and making sure that you're brutally honest with yourself. And sometimes you don't get your ego, carry you right too far, right? Because sometimes you can say, hey, I am the guy who built this product. I am the guy who built this company, or I'm the one who made this growth happen. It never is you. The minute you start with you, I think you're going to get yourself in trouble. And that's the way I think about it.
Okay. Any other point of view? Go ahead.
I've done startups for more than 20 years, and reflection is very important. The way I've been looking at it, roughly every 18 months, I stop and ask myself, is this continuing, or should I do something different? But the moment I decide that yes, I'm on it, I'm still on board, I'm fully committed for 18 months. So it doesn't matter what's going to happen in between. I'm going to at least give myself enough time. But I have multiple checkpoints where you have to basically ask yourself, should you continue or not? And that's very important. I wanted to add one thing that I think is also very important related to that, and it was about failure earlier and risk. One thing that actually startup can do is actually create casualties with your friends. So it's something that is, not that many people talk about, but having done multiple startups, I also lost multiple friends. And this is, I see it as a failure. It's a personal failure because some of them were my very, very good friend. One of them was like the godfather of my daughter. And, there's finance involved. Sometimes your family puts money in the company. And, that's very tricky. So you have to be really aware of these things, the way you make your decision. And sometimes, going on, we all think, oh, go on business with your friends, a great team, but that can be also very, very dangerous. So that's my final word about,
Thank you, Jeff. I think, sorry, I know I didn't get to it on the failure, but really, thank you for plugging this in. I think that's very important. I know, probably, I'm sure many people in the room can relate to this. I've also seen some of those personally myself. So thank you for that. Khalid, anything you will add on that? Because I know I didn't get a chance to ask you that question.
I was about to make the exact same comment that that is one of the major casualties, because I think when I was at Cisco, I was always an individual contributor. The biggest transition for me was to realize that there's a point where IQ becomes lesser than EQ when you go into the leadership. And that is in a lot of cases, he made a very excellent statement that you lost in the fog of your ego. And that was one of the biggest learning experience for me, that you have to, and I noticed this in Cisco leaders. I'm very good friends with two guys at Cisco who I dearly admire, is Joe Pinto and Woody Setman. And I used to talk to Joe on a regular basis, and also to Woody. One of the things I noticed about both of them, they're very high EQ people. When you talk to them, instantly you start to trust these individuals. And they emotionally connected. That is one thing that I felt that was one of my failures. It's like I wasn't able to mature myself emotionally, that I could start connecting with their people at the level I should have. And that's a learning. That was a learning for me throughout the startup. And on a personal level, that was a major failure I still reflect on and said, how do I learn to have that level of EQ, which I noticed in a lot of Cisco leadership, which is present. And that's why I feel when I talk to people, in this experience, I talk to people who came out of different companies in networking. I think Cisco is one of the biggest success reasons for Cisco is the EQ of the leadership.
So I think it was great that the two people I met asking, I think they had a very unique perspective on the failures. I think one thing I could remember, actually this kind of relates to Praveen. You may not remember this. I was just making a transition at Cisco from engineer to manager. And engineer to manager is a tricky transition because engineer thinks he knows everything, right? And engineer thinks that he can manage anything. And he kind of looks at leadership as just the overhead. And I was one of them. And I was with Praveen at that time when I was making this transition way back. And during that time, he kind of didn't tell me this directly, but he gave me this article. He was going to Harvard Business School. He kind of gave this article about IQ and EQ. He said, just go read this page. He didn't say that as coaching, nothing. He just said, you just need to read this. I think, he kind of gave me a message. It actually changed the way I did things after. And I think I'm sure that plays a big role when you're in a startup because they're in a pressure cooker situation. In a bigger company, you've got a lot bigger buffer. So obviously you can deal with emotions a little differently. But when you're in a smaller company, you don't have enough runway. So you deal with that EQ in the wrong way. I think you're going to go take the entire company down. So I think it's a great last question and answer because I think we're kind of running late. VP is giving me hard looks. So I will want to kind of end this with one question with probably one word answer from each one, which is, if there is one word to describe you as a leader, business leader, technology leader, whatever you believe has kind of brought success to you, and how would you describe yourself? And then what advice would you give? If there is one advice, if there is a guy in the room or a girl in the room who wants to do a startup tomorrow, right? What advice would you give them? So we'll go with JF because he's the master of startups.
One word.
One word.
I was going to say good luck, but honestly, to me it's all about tenacity. But I don't have one word. I guess it's the support. I would say support. The support of my family and my friends actually through the journey. If you don't have that, that's really, really challenging.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Bhaskar?
I think it's easy for me. It's conviction.
Yeah, I was thinking about belief, just believing in that it will work. That's and with coupled with tenacity, I don't want to use two words. That's what it is.
Correct? Yeah, for me, consistency. Just don't give up.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, it's always learn, right? Never stop learning. I think that's fundamental to any success.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I'd like to take a moment to kind of really, I know the folks on the stage, I think they've been pretty humble in kind of representing their success or the failure, but I also know some of them I've worked with, so obviously they've been quite modest about how they've described themselves. And I'm sure we could have learned a lot more from them if they had more time. What I would like to do is thank for their valuable time on a weekday to come in and spend some time, and hopefully they will get some more time to work with you, probably kind of mentor you, some of you, and if you've got any ideas that you want to discuss, I would hope the panel is open to considering that. But before we kind of let them go off the stage, let's kind of give a great round of applause.
A big round of applause. I think you're right, we continuously learn, and I think everybody here learned something. Before they take off, I wanted to bring the ICON team up here and the FalconX team up here for a photo op, and we have a little gift for all of them to bring balance to their lives, have a little bit of alcohol and enjoy. So just the two teams, and while we are doing that, I wanted a little housekeeping over here. Everybody can just take the food, plates, etc. that they brought in and just put it into the garbage. Wait, and they'll be available to talk to you, I'm hoping. Yeah. So ICON team and FalconX team, can you come up, please? Yeah, just the speakers first. Just them.
Yes, that's right. Oh, yeah.
Wait, till I get that background. And everybody just has heads up, we have the FalconX facility upstairs, there are some startups there. You can come and talk to them, visit our space, and get to learn what they're doing, okay? So take upstairs.
Gypsy, go and stand there, please. So Gypsy is going to sell next company for $1 billion.
We need also FalconX and ICON.
ICON team. Come in. Yeah. Or even sit down, whatever works. Yeah. Wow, I got. Thank you so much. I think we've got some gift for you. Thank you. I got that. Hopefully I can.
Because you guys are yeah. Okay.